Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Y'all, Jimmy, the Chaos Goblin strikes again. I should have known better than to mention I was working on my DC Universe meets Ravenloft hybrid D&D campaign on social media. My bad. He goes and tags a bunch of comics creators we know, and now I have to get it in gear and whip this campaign into shape so we can start playing. Another friend chimes in, "Are you going to make maps?" It's fair to say it's been a while since I put something together, so I guess? Question mark? It was then that I discovered Arkenforge. If you don't know who Arkenforge is, they have everything you need to make your TTRPG more fun and immersive, allowing you to build, play, and export animated maps, including in-person fog of war capability that lets your players interact with maps as the adventure unfolds while you, the DM, get the full picture. Now I'm set to easily build high-res animated maps, saving myself precious time and significantly adding nuance to our campaign. That's a win every day in my book. Check them out at arkenforge.com and use the discount code YETI5 to get $5 off. I'll drop a link in the show notes for you, and big thanks to Arkenforge for partnering with our show. I think I'm going to make Jimmy play a Goblin Warlock just to get even.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Yeti's Cryptid Creator Corner. I'm one of your hosts, Jimmy Gasparo, and what a treat I have for you today. I have writer and artist, comic creator who I've been a big fan of, and I'm so excited. The honor and privilege is all mine to chat today with none other than Declan Shalvey. Declan, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thanks. And for anyone listening, we established how fortunate you were before the call, which is why you're reiterating it. And you're right. It's such a huge honor for you. And I'm very well, thanks.
No, it truly is. And I tried to set this up before, and I think I kind of just got jammed up and busy with my day job, because it's always a little tricky working out the time difference with
it might have been my fault too, because I guess I don't want to say this or something like a wanker, but I do get a good few interview requests, and if I don't reply right there and then, I'll just absolutely forget about it. It just kind of goes in, another request will shove the previous one out of my brain. So
right.
I always try to say to people, if they ever contact me, like if I don't get back to them, don't take it for any kind of like animosity. Just email me again, because like I'm sure there's a lot of emails in my brain bin, that will never get, they just won't ever be found again. So no, thanks for your due diligence.
No, I appreciate it. I was lucky enough. Also, I got to meet you at. I was in Dublin. Just happenstance, I was in Dublin for Dublin Comic Con back in March, and was able to meet you. And I think my brother was with me. Got some stuff signed. So that was great. And you were able to talk to us, and I really enjoyed myself for the day that I was at Dublin Comic Con. I was shocked by the number of like young people cosplaying, which, I mean, I go to Baltimore Comic Con every year here and has some of that, but the sheer amount of people dressed up at Dublin Comic Con was amazing.
Not to derail your panel thing, but I am curious, what did you think of Dublin Comic Con as opposed to, like, I mean, you've done loads of different types of shows in the States, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, they do have a lot of different ones. I mainly go to Baltimore. I've been to some Comic Con. I've been to some smaller shows. I mean, I was impressed with how much stuff like there was there. One of the reasons I like Baltimore is I feel like it's much geared towards like the comic creators, which is nice. It was great, the folks that I did get to meet and talk to at Dublin Comic Con, but the comic creators and kind of like Artist Alley did seem to be like limited to like one room, although there were like many different floors. So there was a lot to see and do there, and I loved all the people there. Especially dressed up and participating. It looked like everyone was having a good time. But I guess if I had any criticism of it, I was just surprised that there weren't like more actual creators and folks in Artist Alley.
No, I'd agree with you there. Sorry, are you from Baltimore?
No, I'm from Philly. Well, right outside of Philly.
Philly. Okay, so I'm hearing the the accent. I was trying to place if it was Baltimore, Philly. Yeah, no. I'd agree. Well, ultimately, Dublin Comic Con is a pop culture show, so it's very much, it's. I think the main attractions are the actors and voice actors and stuff like that. But I'd agree with you. There would be criticism I'd have the show too, but that's what they get. As in the people who are applying for tables and stuff are mainly craft type. I don't know if it's a generational thing, because I see it some other shows as well, where there's a lot of young people kind of coming in, but they're doing like stickers, prints, but I'm making comics. But whereas when I started going to conventions in the early 2000s, everybody was making comics. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or it's an age thing or whatnot, but a show can only have people who are applying to go to the show. So it's weird. I personally would like to see more of that, but myself, because I think that's the great thing about conventions is it's where you go and it's where you put out your not very well done 12 page zine or something, and then you get good feedback on it, and you come back the next year, and your every show is a deadline to put out your next project, and you get better and better, and you build a network of peers to do it. That's how I started out, and it wouldn't be fair for me to say whether that's true or not anymore, because I wouldn't know. I'm not starting out anymore, so I don't know what it's like. And we didn't have shows like that when I was starting out. I had to go to the UK and I had to go to America to go to comic conventions. There wasn't really anything at that scale. Now, Dublin Comic Con wouldn't be much compared to, say, New York Comic Con. It's Ireland. It's not a massive, but it is a big show. Definitely the biggest one. So I'd like to see. I would like to see more comics there. But yeah, like I said, I don't know if it's an Ireland thing or it's a cultural thing or it's a geek culture thing. But I guess we'll see how it goes. I guess.
Yeah, hopefully they're able to continue to grow the comics area of it, because there's certainly enough people there and enough interest. I mean, there were just something to do on, I think it was 3 to 5 levels of the convention center where it was held. So it was a fun day. And
cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I think I told
the
you
quality.
At the time. Sorry, talk over. I think that something we're very obsessed with. Anybody who ever comes over to Ireland is like, "Did you have a good time? Are you all right? Are you well?" I'm sure everybody asks, like, "Are you all right? Are you okay? Are you having a good time?" We're always worried about it.
Well, I also like the quality of creators there in terms of like just my own personal interest and what I like to read. I'm not like a big. I mean, I have a lot of, a fair number of comics, but I'm not like a collector. But I do like to go and when I go to Baltimore and stuff and get something signed, and just to have and tell folks like, hey, I really loved your comic. So getting to meet you. And Ellie Wright is a colorist that I really love Ellie's work. And Rebecca Nalty was there. But Chris O'Halloran.
I didn't see Rebecca there.
Yeah, I think she was. I think she was along a sidewall tabling with someone else. Because
I missed her. So.
Yeah,
see, that's the thing is because I know pretty much everybody. So if I miss somebody, I'm like, son of a because there was the nice thing for me was seeing everyone. I was sitting next to Danny Earls and unfortunately also sitting next to Stephen Mooney. So you do get to see everyone, and we all went. I think my favorite part was some of us went out for dinner afterwards and just getting to actually have some. Which I've noticed now, the difference between starting out and being established is just trying to grab a little bit of time with the people who just to because there's so many at an event like that. It's hard to get proper FaceTime. The good thing about the smaller shows is it's easier to wrangle people together. But sorry, I'm yammering.
No, it's fine. I was going to say Stephen Mooney was there, and I was just about to mention Chris O'Halloran was there. I'm a huge fan of his and Nick Roach's Scarant Hood. Like that was just one of my favorites when that came out. So it was it was great to see folks, and just happenstance, and to say that I got to go to was at a comic convention in another country, and
you went all the way to the country just to go to a comic convention. I'm sure some friends of yours were made fun. Had to go with you.
They did, but it's what I enjoy. I'm old enough now where that stuff doesn't bother me. I like what I like,
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious something you said in terms of when you started out. So I mean, I want to say your first like published work was around like 2006.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was an indie book called Hero Killers, where I went. So I was living in Limerick, and I had gotten a portfolio review in Belfast by PJ Holden, who encouraged me to go to UK conventions because there wasn't really much in the way here. So I went and I met a writer called Andy Winter, who was publishing his own work, self-publishing, and I was showing my portfolio around basically to anybody who would look. And I got some good reaction, but I wasn't ready yet, but I was getting there. And yeah, so that Andy basically said, if I have a story, if I write a story and I publish it, would you draw it? I can't afford to pay you, but I can publish it. So that was the first thing. There was an indie book called Hero Killers, which got a bit of it won the Eagle Awards the following year, so I got a bit of attention that way. But that was it. I started out by going to conventions in the big scary England. Making sure I didn't wear a tricolor because just in case. But no, and everyone there was always lovely, and I had a really good response. But I also didn't realize I met Stephen Mooney a couple of years later at that Bristol show, was the big show at the time. So I didn't even know other Irish people were doing comics for a long time. So that we were all independently going over to the UK because that's where the convention scene really was, and then we wouldn't even meet each other. So yes, it's very, very different now. I mean, in some ways, conventions are always the same, but like I said, there's way more Irish creators now, so it would be easier for somebody to meet an Irish creator because they're actually in the country. Whereas when I was coming up, I think there was maybe 3 or 4 creators from the country, and I think Dermot Power and Killian Plunkett would have been a Irish artists who'd done work at Dark Horse and stuff, but I think they'd left comics at that stage. So there really wasn't much visible Irish creator stuff at the time, but that's so different now. I could give you a list of 30 to 40 people now who are professionally doing comics who are living in Ireland.
What do you think has helped the rise of the Irish, comic scene? Is it just like social media? Is it folks able to connect in easier ways? Or I know sometimes even like the Irish government has like grants for creators. I mean, do things like that help, or is there one in particular thing that has kind of paved the way for the growth of the Irish comic scene?
I'd say the one particular thing, you're looking right at it, baby. No, well, I'm partly joking, only because in the last few years, there's a good few people, like say Danny Earls has said to me that so me and Will Sliney and Nick Roach and Stephen Mooney and more, when we were coming up, we did a group sketch blog, but sketch blogs were a thing, called Eclectic Mix. So we did a daily sketch blog, which again was just kind of for us to kind of have a reason to show stuff, and being guys who actually did comics in the country, have a reason to just kind of like keep in contact. And that was it. And then years later, I've got people like Danny saying like, oh yeah, like I looked at that blog every day, seeing that there were Irish creators doing comics made me realize I could do it too. And I've heard that from a few people, where like I did a talk at one place, or Mooney did a talk someplace, or Will talked in his old college, where I think there was a secondary generation below us who had, we had access to the internet. That was definitely huge. I would say that our generation, say, mix 0.1, I guess, had access to the internet, so you could get jobs, and you could get a worldwide audience in a way that you couldn't for people before us. I think maybe then the next generation below us had all that access, and the excuse. I think I say a lot of times in Ireland, we need an excuse to do things. So if you see somebody doing it, you're like, oh, okay, or permission, I think is maybe a better word, where you might have a mad idea, but you need somebody else to go like, yeah, you can do that. It's what PJ did for me. Like PJ said, no, you'll draw comics. And I was like, I will. But his argument was, yeah, you're in your 20s and you haven't stopped now, so it's only a matter of time. And that kind of gave me the mental permission to go, oh, okay, I'll just keep doing it then. You have no frame of reference. And it is, there's so much more resources now online. This is sometimes I kind of get a bit like not frustrated, but I'm confused when people go, "Oh, I don't really know what to do." I'm like, there's so many resources. When I was starting out, there was nothing. There was some blogs. I know Warren had one, and I was on the Middle World forums back in the day. I know there were Bendis ones too. Like those were the kind of the first place where you get resources. Right. But now, I mean, Twitter wasn't even a thing at the time. Like so, so I think it's a mix of a lot of stuff. I think less stigma about getting into creative jobs as there would have been. I think Ireland would have been a bit more parochial going back 10, 15 years. And the resources and the excuse to seeing guys like myself or Will or Mooney actually having an actual career of it probably. Yeah, I mean, I know I wouldn't suggest it. I just know it to be true because it's been said to me a good few times at this stage that that's a factor. So, and that's nice to know. You know, you don't really think about it. You're just like trying to, from our point of view, we were just trying to keep our head above water. But then you're above water for 15 years. You know, you realize people have been paying attention, which is nice, but also kind of scary.
Yeah. So when you went to school in Limerick. I think your degree is art and printmaking. Was there always a thought that like I'm gonna do comics, or was there like a plan B?
Well, printmaking was plan B, and as you know, printmaking is a massive industry, like fine art printmaking. No, comics was always it. I always wanted to do comics, but I just didn't know how to do it. You know, I remember I looked into like the Joe Kubert school, but then you know. College was free when I was going to college, and then when my mother saw what the Joe Cooper school cost, and you wouldn't be able to it was just like that's not possible. So I just didn't really know what to do. So my art teacher suggested I go to Limerick School of Art and Design, and which I did, and that was good for me to just kind of see a lot. I was so just looking at comics all the time. I didn't look at anything else. So when I went to that college, they were completely dismissive about comics, which really annoyed me, but it did force me out of my very narrow little bubble and see lots of different stuff and be exposed to different types of work and to experiment. And I think it actually did me the world of good. Just at the time, I was very, about it. Yeah, very adolescent about it. But so no, that was good. And then after I finished college, I was kind of working on my portfolio in Limerick. I went on the dole and I was just trying to work on a portfolio, just try to put a bit of money together, fly to the UK to get to a convention, do it again, try to save more. And I remember I went to San Diego Comic-Con in maybe 2008. That was my first time in America ever, was San Diego Comic-Con. And I didn't get work from it or anything, but that was a big leap to actually go to an American convention. And I've pretty much been going to New York Comic-Con every year ever since. Like, I think the US shows separates the men from the boys. The UK ones are of note, but it's definitely a big deal to go to the UK from Ireland, but to go to the States is, I mean, when you have to be serious about it if you're going to spend that kind of money, you know?
Yeah. I'm sure. I am sure
Sorry, I think I just waffled on your question there. Sorry.
No, you didn't. You answered it exactly in terms of it was always comics. Yeah, but I'm sure in terms of having to come over, for something like New York and, carry whatever you're bringing along with you, or if you have like a publisher like supplying some stuff for you in order for you to sign. And I saw you were just actually in the States recently. I think you were at Dynamite's offices signing Thundercats, and I think you're actually in Philly too. I think you had a signing at Brave New Worlds.
That's right. Yeah. And I had a very fun night afterwards. Yeah. Like I had probably the most fun the night in Philly. It wasn't as big a night signing wise. I'd say Third Eye the night before, but after that was just like a nice dinner and went back to the hotel. After the signing in Philly, we went out. So
nice.
It was good fun. Yeah. But at the time when I was starting out, like I said, me and Will went over to San Diego and then New York. But like I remember we were at the Comic-Con talking to an artist who was like, "Why don't you get a table?" We're like, "What?" We're like, "Yeah, why don't you get a table at the show?" And we're like, "We're nobody." So I think maybe we had just done some small press stuff at the time. was like, oh yeah, but we don't deserve a table. We're not like, we wouldn't, that was our attitude. We don't deserve one, but like, we didn't understand you can just apply and pay for one. Especially at the time, it was probably easier. But our minds were like, oh yeah, but we're not real artists. Like we're not legitimate. Like, so we wouldn't, but it's like, no, you can, basically, I think that's it. It's the American attitude of you can make yourself legitimate. Whereas I think in Ireland, we're expecting a bit of a, like, no, off you go. You can do it now.
Yeah.
But those huge learning curves to all of that stuff going back. I mean, it's mad to think how long it's been, like a long time now. I still think of myself as like a new, just starting out. But,
Right.
like, I've actually been at Marvel over 10 years now. So I think that makes me a veteran technically. So no, I'm old. I'm an old man now.
What was that like then? You said there's a bit of a learning curve, but with that attitude in terms of just starting out and feeling like, I need permission to do this, or I need somebody else to tell me like, oh, I'm an artist and I belong here, like at the table. When you start doing, Marvel work and that the early days of Marvel and going to conventions as someone who's now worked on like Marvel character and those books, what was that adjustment period like to actually be out there at a table, at a convention, at a signing, having started to do work for Marvel?
Well, it was a little more gradual than that, because like I was doing 28 Days Later, Boom Studios for a year,
Mm-hmm.
and doing American conventions like as a professional. I wasn't doing that. I was a professional, but it was just the first. it was the first American visible gig. I'd done a couple of graphic novels for the UK, but it wasn't the comics industry that I wanted to be in. So getting to 28 Days Later was a good kind of a soft way in, because I met I got to go to conventions, be behind a table, sign stuff, meet other artists, build a network of peers, so I kind of got to slowly do that. Then after a year, I got Marvel work, and then that was definitely a bump up. So I think there's something to be said for having like a gradual rise, as opposed to, I think what happens sometimes now with younger talent is they get snapped up and then put on something big, and then have a very hard time adjusting to it, because all of a sudden all the spotlight's on them and they haven't necessarily put in the grunt work, they haven't dug 100 holes, so all of a sudden they're getting asked to dig 100 holes, which is fairly basic, but it's a lot of hard work. And it's way harder to do with a massive spotlight shining down on you. It's a little easier to do in the dark, or with a soft light, so I think I kind of built up a bit of there was an adjustment period between while working on 20 Days Later that helped me a lot. But it is also definitely the case where you do if you do Marvel, the second you do a Marvel thing, people treat you differently or look at you differently. But I also think what came with that for me was a little bit of confidence, like I did it. The thing I really, really, I wanted more than anything was to work at Marvel. I did it. And, there's definitely a little bit of feeling like a fraud at the start. But if I just said I'm going to try do my best work and be a good professional and good to work with and everything, and then after a while, I think you get a bit of a confidence boost. It's weird. I think there's a weird feedback loop of like when you get a level of like success or feeling of confidence, it actually bleeds into the work, and then the work gets more interesting and stuff. So I think especially the first few years of your career where you're improving and your spotlight's growing, there's definitely some kind of momentum that happens there. So I definitely ran with the momentum as much as I could.
All right, let's take a quick break. Hey comics fam, indie comic book publisher Band of Bars just got a level up and announced it is now a cooperative. This heralds a new era for them, including a partnership with Dauntless Stories. And they added several new members to the ownership group. Marcus Jimenez is now Chief Operating Officer, Brent Fisher takes on the role of Chief Diversity Officer, and Joey Galvez is introduced as Head of Kickstarter Ops and Social Media Manager, which is sure to increase their capabilities overall as a publisher. And it further promotes their mission statement of advancing representation, inclusion, and diversity in the medium. They also established a new board of directors to help chart the new path of their journey. With new projects in the works like Alas Goodbye dropping in June, Unbroken soon launching on Kickstarter, and Pawn coming up with Dauntless, stay tuned to this space for more exciting news from the growing Bards family. let's get back to the show.
You always, speaking of 28 Days Later, you always have and still have your hand in, working on like other types of properties like that, like not creator owned or 'cause I mentioned before, I think before we started recording, I just read a couple issues of your recent Alien run with Thaw and then Descendant, and Thundercats is right now. Um, is it does it ever get kind of I would think getting into a property like that and coming up with a pitch or several pitches to see what editorial likes and kind of digging into, like, especially something like Alien, like, well, what's been done already, because everyone's familiar with the movies, but there's a lot of comics out there as well,
and not many opinions.
Yeah. Yeah. Does it ever get any easier in terms of working with a different licensed property like those?
Yeah, I probably felt more intimidated about Alien just because it's very much of a franchise of my generation. I wasn't mad into it. I wasn't into Alien when I was younger because I was too scared. I didn't watch those films till I was like an adult. But I like, they're great. I love them now, but I don't want to pretend that like I was always into them as a child. So because I didn't have that childhood attachment, I think I was able to be a bit more sober about looking at the franchise, what it was. And I'd read the Dana Warren Johnson and Salvador Rocca books issues, and no, when you're asked to do it, it's intimidating and it's also exciting. I was basically asked, like, do you want to put your own stamp on this hugely influential franchise? Yeah, cool. Like, that's really cool. And I like, it's one thing I have discovered is that I like it's why I like creator owned so much, I think, is I like projects, I like making things, and I like building things. And the great thing with something like a Marvel project like that is, like, here's all the resources. It's not like with a creator owned, like, where maybe you have to get money together or you're to do X, Y, and Z. No, Marvel are going to basically pay you to develop something. And all that you really need to worry about is, can you make the thing that's in your head or close to what's in your head? So what I didn't want to do is, like, do an Alien book that, like, looked like, I don't know, Justice League. Nothing against it. I just thought Justice League should look like Justice League, not Alien. No, I wanted to make a very moody, right, atmospheric book. And could I do that within the system of Marvel Comics? Which you can, of course. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes things are against you. But I was working with a great editor, and who really helped me assemble a team that would make the type of book that I wanted to make. So then, problem after that is, can I write it? And I tried my darndest. But no, yeah, like, but I enjoyed that. It is definitely intimidating, but I had to, like, figure out. I actually, if you follow my newsletter, 2 weeks ago I put my pitch for the Alien. Is what I sent to Marvel and Fox, was like, this is my pitch, basically. And if there's problems at the start, then there's going to be an issue, I guess. But there really wasn't. It was fairly seamless. So I really looked out where the thing I wanted to make, they were okay with me making, and I got to make it. And nothing, there was some creative things here and there, which is totally, to be expected on a license thing. But it's not even necessarily bad. Like, notes you get back, as long as the notes make your story better, or force you to think of more creative solutions, that's good. It's a pain in the arse when you're writing it, because you're like, I want this to be done, but I want it to be good. So there's not much point putting all the work in just to get lazy at the end run. So that was more intimidating, I would say. Thundercats, if I'm being honest, not that I didn't care, but it did not seem like a big risk to me. It was like, okay, well, I have not heard anybody talk about Thundercats in years. I loved it as a kid. Could I do something? It was timing wise worked out quite nicely too, because Alien was wrapping up, and I was like, I liked doing that. I liked taking a thing and doing something with it. I'd like to do that again. And then, as it happens, the offer for Thundercats came at just exactly the right time. But it's a different approach. Like, I'm not going to do Alien, which is a dark, horrific book, that wasn't going to be my take with Thundercats. I wanted to
Yeah.
come up with something else. And I did, and I was really happy with it. But it didn't really seem like I didn't feel the same pressure because Alien has been something that's always in the zeitgeist. Thundercats to me has been out of the zeitgeist for a long time, so I wasn't necessarily worried about backlash. I just figured it was a low risk thing. So just go in with just do exactly what you'd like to do. You know, Key was getting a good artist, and Drew was on very, very soon. So it actually felt like we kind of developed it together. But so I felt more freedom to kind of do something different with it. But then, then when the orders came in, I mean, issue 1 was already finished at that stage. There was nothing to be done at that stage. So it was interesting. I felt less pressure with Thundercats, even though that has become way much of a bigger deal.
Yeah, I mean, the reception to it seems like it's been great. I think issue 1 is like on its 3rd printing.
I think so, yeah. I mean, the reaction has been great, but the reaction was great before the book came out. So it's hard, it's hard to go like, oh yeah, like everyone loves the book, it's selling great. No, it sold great before it was out.
Yeah.
so you can't really rely. I can't really rely on like the quality of the book or me and Drew. But like, I think me and Drew have something to do with the success, but clearly I underestimated how much of an audience was salivating for a take like this, which was, I guess, closer to the original. I mean, again, that's what I wanted to do in the first place. Is I didn't want to do something crazy different. I just different enough to be freeing from a storytelling point of view, but close enough to the original to be like what everybody would remember. And I guess, I knew nostalgia was a thing because Turtles has done well, and the thing at that stage, the Transformer stuff was kicking off, but I didn't see it as a trend. I just saw it as 2 different books that did well. But I think it's clear there's a trend now. After 3 times the 3 types of book coming out and them all doing well, clearly there's a nostalgia thing. Although I'd say now everyone's chasing to do the nostalgia thing, and now that'll by the time everybody starts to cop to that, the audience will have moved on maybe, but we'll see. But no, from a creative standpoint, Thundercats is more freeing. Not that, Aliens wasn't or anything. It's just, I just felt there was more established rules. I created established rules for Aliens that were tighter than I have with Thundercats. But funnily enough, that's been the thing that, like, if I had some if I had some foresight, I'd be like, no, you need to be more worried about this. But if I was more worried, I might have gotten scared, and I wouldn't want that either.
Yeah. I think the nostalgia factor is definitely at play, especially, folks maybe in their, I'm 45 now, but people in their like late 30s into their 40s who grew up with Thundercats, who now have kids I saw a lot of pictures from Free Comic Book Day here in the US on Saturday, and like a lot of parents with their kids. And Thundercats is like the perfect thing that nostalgia has a bit, to play with. Like, oh, I like Thundercats as a kid. It was a Thundercat comic. I can read it. My kid, can read it. Is a huge deal. I think nostalgia might help to get them to get issue 1, but I think nostalgia isn't going to maintain a readership alone.
Yeah, you're right.
It has to be good. I mean, I read issues 1 and 2 and I really liked it, so I'm going to get the next couple of ones. And I think Stephen Mooney, who's come up a few times now, wrote issue 5, I believe.
He wrote and drew
issue 5. So yeah, I'm excited to look at that one. But yeah, I think nostalgia will only get you, so far. But it is.
It's true. Like, I wonder what with the X-Men cartoon, because I watched that out of nostalgia, but it's great, and I wonder, will that bring a new audience to X-Men that hasn't, like the original cartoon is what got me into X-Men.
Sure.
And I wonder, we're not going to know this for a year or so, or maybe more, but I wonder, are people who say my age, coming to that cartoon out of nostalgia? But the cartoon is so good, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets a whole new audience, like X-Men Evolution did years ago. Like, it's a weird thing. Cartoons seem to kind of shift the generational interest, and comics can really ride those coattails if it's done right. Like I wouldn't be surprised if stuff happened, and I'm not saying it will or anything, but and I was laughing at suggestions of this a few months ago, but now I think it's different. I could easily see there being a new Thundercats cartoon or film or toy, like, because enthusiasm breeds further enthusiasm, you know.
Sure.
Like to me, the risk of doing Thundercats is basically do a good comic or not. The end, you know.
Yeah.
But if I was in charge of Thundercats and I saw all this like enthusiasm, that's something you could pay off. I totally could see why. Well, look, that's why we have a Chitara book coming out. You know, people are digging it, so why not give people more of the thing that they really like?
Yeah.
But it's not really something you think about when you're like an artist working on a book. You know, those are now considerations I have, like from a writing point of view, or you know,
Right.
like I said, like I want to say project manager, but like, you know, a creative. I can't think of a term that doesn't make me sound like a twat. But look, it is what it is, I guess. Maybe I just I should just roll with it. But you know what I mean? As somebody who's like would have an interest in like how these things get put together and made, as opposed to the person who's paid to generate them, which is kind of more what the artist is. You know, they're not really at the front. They're not at the front of the creative project. They're a secondary. I'm not saying that as they should be. I'm just saying that's how it worked. Like it's how it worked when I was just an artist. Quotes are now and like more quote unquote more of a writer. I do both, so I know what both ends are like, and I know that really no one's really asking the artist what do they think of the creative decisions. It's like, here's the script, best of luck with it. You know?
Yeah. Well, and you do both. So I'm curious, when did the writing aspect kind of, you know, come to the forefront? When you're going out there, when you start out, you're showing your portfolio, you start getting work as an artist. Like when, you know, because I've read a bunch of stuff that you've written so far, including, you know, the next thing I want to talk about in terms of Old Dog, which is phenomenal. I think it's my favorite thing of yours. And
really? Cool.
I think even though I felt like you understood the world of Savage Town and Limerick that you were writing about, Old Dog feels like it's coming from, you know, somebody, and even though it's totally different than, you know, reality. It's not like a slice of life comic. It feels very personal, which is kind of why there's something about it that I feel like, oh, this is about some stuff. I don't know if I'm right or not. Maybe it's just an interesting.
No,
story,
you're actually no, you're dead right actually. Well, to answer the first part of your question there, writing wise, it's weird. I liked writing in school, but I just never really thought of it as a thing. It was always art. Art was the thing that I wanted to do, and you know, when I started drawing at Marvel, I just wanted to be a really, really good artist. You know, I just wanted to be the best artist I could be, the best artist. And then you see how good other people are. You're like, yeah, that's never going to happen. You know, and when there's James Harrens out there, you know, but I was good mates with Sean Murphy for a long time, and he was really, really good for advice. And I remember seeing him make a turn to writing more, and I'm like, you're such a good artist. Why do you need to write? And I don't want to speak out of turn, but overall, what he kind of said to me was like, if you're writing your own work, you have more control over your career. And I looked around, I saw him do it over time. I saw a lot of other people do it over time. And I noticed a lot of times when I was on good projects, I would hear afterwards like, oh, X person wasn't interested, or, you know, they didn't want you for this, they didn't want you for that. I was like, oh, well, okay, that kind of sucks that you're not part of the conversation. So I remember just thinking to myself, if I could teach myself how to write, and I was also very lucky. I was talking to like, you know, Rick Remender and Scott Snyder and stuff about working on projects, and it was great. I know I was going to work with Warren Ellis, and you know, I was in a very nice place of kind of being, I don't know what the term would be now, but like maybe artist du jour of the time. Like I was getting a lot of attention from all the people who I wanted attention from. It was great, but I also thought this may not last. You know, somebody else might come along, and you know, or people just might lose interest. So I thought I wouldn't want that to happen. So if I could teach myself how to write, then no matter what, I could just do something of my own. Worst case scenario, I could just do my own thing, and I wouldn't need to be dependent on a successful writer to get something made. And you know, Warren was working on Injection, and Warren was doing all these like, you know, animated series, and Jordy was working on Batman and stuff like. So on both sides of the creative side of the book I was working on, they were getting to work on all these other things. And I realized I'd like to do something else too. I can't draw anything clearly because I'm drawing injection, but I'd like to make a project of my own, and that's where Savage Town came from. Was I wanted to make a comic that was like the '90s Irish films I grew up watching, which is there was a big growth in Irish cinema in the '90s with directors like Jim Sheridan and what's his name? Did the Crying Game. I'm blanking, but there was a good. It was happening. There was so many good Irish films coming out then. I wanted to make something. There was nothing in comics like that, so that's where I got the idea for Savage Town. And I hired Sebastian Gerner to help me to edit it, like for me to like write a draft, and he would give me notes back. And so I taught myself how to. And I've been listening to writing podcasts for years. That's the good thing about drawing, is you can listen to lots of stuff. So I was listening to directors' commentaries and writers' commentaries.
Yeah.
So I'd kind of been slowly soaking up all this kind of, advice. Also reading scripts from amazing art writers like Jeff Parker and Brian Wood and Warren Ellis and Colin Bunn and Jerry Duggan. Like I'd basically been studying for years. And I think at that stage, I felt like I had a voice as a storyteller. So I said, I'm just going to put this together and see if Image would publish it. And they said they would. So, and then I made it. And once I'd made that one thing, I felt the compulsion to make another thing. So then fast forward, whatever it is, 10 or so years later, where I was as an artist, I was enjoying, and where I was as a writer, I was enjoying. But I knew I'd seen all these younger guys coming up, like Daniel Warren Johnson, Tyler Boss, Michael Walsh, like just lots of guys who started. Well, I don't know when Daniel started, but I feel like it was after me. But guys who like had less resources than I did, but were putting their money where their mouth was as a writer artist. And it was after COVID. I had a bit of a stare in the mirror and was like, why haven't I done this yet? There is no reason why I haven't done it except fear. So fuck it, I'm going to do it. And I think I'd pitched a couple of stories to Marvel to different projects, and they kind of both stalled. So around the same time, so I'm like, I'm just going to fucking come up with something, which I had been slowly gestating for a while, but I was like, no, I'm going to actually do it now. I'm going to spend time on this, not work for hire pitches, and I'm going to pitch to Image, and it's likely that Eric would be into it. So I did, and he was. So, and now, and I felt it was much more of a proactive decision. And I was going to have somebody else color it, but then by the time I was working on it, I'm like, I feels like I'd be handing over something that should mean more to me than anything else I've done, just for somebody else to color. So I ended up coloring it myself as well. Designed it. I did everything on it except for lettering, because I just don't want to do that.
I think Clayton Cowles, right? You got.
Yeah, Clayton Cowles is my go-to. Just because we've worked together for so long. Like, so I'll always ask him first. And it is, and Old Dog is actually a very personal story. It's a big mix of stuff I just like, like action hero stuff, grim, bitter protagonists, but also weird sci-fi edges too, because I love my espionage. I like my straight down the middle espionage stories, but I also like my kind of weird sci-fi stuff. So it's just everything I like put into a book, that I'm putting everything into, but also as a result is actually got a quite personal undercurrent to the whole thing. So no, it is the thing I'm most proud of now. I really, really am, and I'm planning more at the moment. But I just decided this year, after putting everything into Old Dog and also working on Time Before Time in the same year, I was just a bit wiped out on creator owned, so I felt I needed to switch to work for hire for a year and then switch back to creator owned the following year. So I mean, I also didn't intend on Thundercats happening. So this year has ended up way more work for hire. I'm doing a Marvel thing at the moment that I can't talk about, but then Thundercats came up, and something else has come up. So I'm actually doing way more work for hire than I intended to. But that's fine. I'll swing back once the time is right again.
Right. What I really like to talk a little bit more about Old Dog, in case there's listeners who haven't checked it out yet.
Yeah, please buy it. Like
Yeah.
it's like I know it's hard. I've been trying to sell it hard while I was working on it, and it's really hard to sell your creator own stuff while you're doing everything. But for a selling point, it's only $10. The first printing was only $10. I'm not going to do the second printing at $10, so I would recommend getting in on it now while you have a nice cheap option to get in. It's like 130 something pages. And I do think it's the best thing I've ever done. Personally, if you think that, that's your opinion.
Yeah, I know. And I do, and I've loved a lot of what you've done. And here's a couple of things. So just my sense of it, Jack Lynch, kind of like a CIA agent, who is basically on a mission that kind of goes south, and after that, things go a bit off the rails with Jack Lynch's life and career. He's kind of like brought back in to go on a mission, and the whole thing kind of plays out in terms of who Jack Lynch is working for. It kind of talks about what we saw in the very beginning. So it's a bit of a spy espionage kind of story. There's definitely some sci-fi elements to it in terms of Jack isn't really clear on his past, and there's some definite reasons for that. But the artwork in it is absolutely fantastic. And one of the things is that I the best way to put it is that it's not exposition heavy. There's a lot of moments that I was not clear about what was going on, but the book is not confusing. And I know that might be difficult for like listeners to hear, but there are I don't like things being spoon fed to me. I don't need
same. I don't need
a writer or an artist, when they're putting something together to tell me everything that is happening, like as it happens. I also don't like in books where or movies where something will happen and then it flashes back and like does a close up on the thing that we were supposed to have paid attention to like 3 seconds ago or even 30 minutes ago. Like I don't let it play out. Let it play out. Let me figure it out. Let me watch it again if I have to, or if I wasn't like paying attention. And there are definitely times during Old Dog where there are things that happen, and I was not quite clear on why I was being shown something. But you have to think about it, and it by the end of it, I feel like it all kind of ties up a lot of those questions that I had with leaving enough mystery for me desperately wanting. I think volume 2. I think you retweeted. I took a picture of it and I said I want at least 5 more volumes. By the end of it, a lot of the questions that I had were answered, and when I went back and looked at stuff, I was able to kind of like suss out what was taking place. So there were things that were not clear, and I think intentionally so. But by the end of the whole story, which was I went through it pretty quickly. It was nothing was confusing. There wasn't anything where I'm like, oh, that there wasn't anything like, oh, that's a plot hole or whatever. It all made sense. I feel like it doesn't spoon feed anything to you. There are moments of it where you're kind of going through and seeing and experiencing it as like Jack Lynch would. And I felt like all of that was like very deliberate. So not only in terms of the artwork, but in terms of the storytelling itself, I felt like it was one of the most, compelling things I've read. And especially following up Time Before Time, which I think I have every issue of. I absolutely loved, because time travel stories are like my number one thing. That I mean, good, bad, nonsensical time travel stories, movies, TV shows, comics. Like that's, I don't know what it was early, like Back to the Future, I think is a near perfect movie. And so so Time Before Time, I was just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's get into it. Just some really compelling characters and story work. But to as I read them, maybe not as you work on them, but to follow up Time Before Time for me, because I finished that first, to read Old Dog. I just felt like it took a lot of the stuff in Old Dog and just kind of like built upon it. And it felt really personal in terms of your protagonist. He's not particularly likable, but he's not like a villain or an anti-hero. He's not unlikable either. It just, I thought, just very, very masterful storytelling, and I love that.
Thanks, man. I really, really, really appreciate that. I appreciate everything you're saying in regards of like how you're digesting the story, and what I would say you're pretty much accurate across the board. It's a slightly frustrating thing as issues come out, and I think because of like the the comics culture as it is, a lot of things like, oh, this doesn't make sense, and that annoys me, or no, sorry, I don't know what this is, so I'm annoyed. Like, I wonder if the same kind of like review culture or online review culture was like reading, and I'm not comparing it, don't get me wrong, but like something like Transmetropolitan or Planetary. If people were really analyzing the hell out of single issues every month as they come out, you don't think about that if you just read a volume in one go. So it's tough to like try and develop something that you want to go long without spoon feeding an audience who are going to like, you don't want people to check out because they know all the answers. The whole, storytelling is I think I said elsewhere, like you're basically like gaslighting your audience because you need them to ask questions that they want answers to, and they need to come back. So, we can't spoon feed everything out. And also like, once you get to the end of issue 6, if you had that answer at the end of issue 1, then it wouldn't be compelling. The thing about doing a long form story is that you're trying to like get an audience to slowly invest more over time, where you're able to kind of like cash in on that investment, as opposed to doing something that's just in and out. And the problem with Old Dog is I'm doing both. I'm doing in and out action adventures, but I'm also trying to build something that you're going to be more invested in over time. And I'm not a fan of things that are overly ambiguous. I like things to like connect reasonably, but I also do need to answer questions as the book goes on, but I also need to ask more questions otherwise, because you need more to go along. Like, I would say in a lot of ways, the book's kind of inspired a lot by like a lot of Bad Robot stuff that I loved, like Lost and Person of Interest and Fringe, that kind of like action sci-fi stuff. Like that's the wheelhouse for me. To me, it's like it's Wildstorm and Bad Robot.
Okay.
That's the kind of sensibility I'm going for, as it was, from aesthetics to story too. But I also wanted, I wanted to do Moon Knight again, but my Moon Knight, do something where I was getting to like, just go in on an idea for an issue and then move on. Like, and that's what that book offered me the opportunity to do action storytelling in a way that I hadn't really gotten to do since Moon Knight. So, but also it's tough when you're doing creator owned as well, because it's all riding on my back. And like, I wish I could say the sales were so good that this book could go on forever. They're not. But it's also the case that like some books don't find their audience till 3 volumes are out. So it's I don't want to answer all the questions up front. I'm in a weird way creatively where I had a first big hurdle to get to, and that's done now. It's volume 1 finished, and I ended in a way where I have to come back and I have to do more. That was my commitment to myself. I'm like, this isn't just going to be 1 volume. It's definitely going to be 2. I'd like it to be more, but I'm going to set it up in that I have to come back and tell the rest. I know what the ending is, and it's not the end of volume 1. So what I'll try to figure out over the next year is how much, like what we had with Time for Time, we had the same problem. And we got to a stage where we realized, okay, we can get to maybe volume 4 before we have financial problems. And then I think by volume 3, we realized, okay, we could probably stretch it out financially to a 5th volume. Can we wrap it up where we wanted to? And we were. So we had enough foresight, or sorry, we were able to see the road far enough to go, okay, we'll have to end it here, and we can, financially, maybe the wheels are good come off the plane, but we can skid the plane long enough to get to the edge of the runway. And I just don't know where I am with Old Dog on that, because that's 100% like on me. Yeah. It was different, me and Roy were paying people on Time Before Time. So, but an Image give me an advance on Old Dog, thankfully. So it's not like I'm in a bad way or anything. But I am also trying to think, how much can I squeeze out of it? How many ideas can I get in there before I have to finish it? and I don't know where it is yet. I'd like to do 3 to 5. Look, honestly, what I'd like to do is just do it every couple of years, do a new volume like Hellboy, you know. But Hellboy has the luxury of being such a smash hit success they can just put out when they want. Oldog doesn't have that audience, and I don't know if it'll have that audience. So it might be the case where I think I'll definitely do 3 volumes, like just for myself. But ideally, I just like to keep doing it. Like I'd like to do a different creator-owned thing that I could write and draw next, in theory, next year, and then the following year come back and do it. Like if I could do a project a year and Old Dog a year. So let's say it's a work for hire this year, Old Dog next year, a different creator on the following year, then Old Dog. Like that would be for me the ideal career where I can just have ideas, make them, and make a living, and also have no problem going to do a Marvel DC thing because that stuff is so. I still get a kick out of all that. I still want to do a Batman book. I still want to do a Daredevil book. So I still have those that kind of
those ambitions,
enthusiasm. Yes, absolutely. But if I can also, but it means I can also do my own stuff. Then that just means when I do work for hire, it's something I want to do as opposed to something I have to do, which is a very, very privileged position to be in. A lot of guys are taking books because they have to. I'm not. I'm very lucky that even like Thundercats, which to me was kind of a side thing. Alien was a side thing.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that got me. I was doing 2 creator-owned books and writing a Marvel book on the side. That was so. That was like, how is this? Where my life is? It's amazing. So I'm very, very, very content. I guess I would just like to know there's more security with Old Dog, that I could just pop in and out when I like, and the stuff, because I'm sure you also don't want to be messing the audience around. But I'm trying to think in 10 years. Having 4 Old Dog books would be a huge accomplishment that no one's ever going to go, when did this come out? But also I have to look at where the market and where it is right now. And it's changing so much all the time.
I mean, that's for sure. It certainly seems like it is. Like, I mean, I don't know. So it seems encouraging, at least from certain aspects. Like I know some retailers that are saying that, Free Comic Book Day, like just yesterday was, you're seeing was a really big success, and things seem to have been, I don't know, leveling out is the right word from the, I guess the chaos of the pandemic and, the past few years. So it is interesting to see where it's going to go. Well, I hope Old Dog finds its audience. So.
Oh, thanks, man. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, I'd say what I wish I could figure out is the book market. Because I would say Old Dog did quite well actually in comic shops, and because you get accruals and stuff. But like there seems to be a number I'm hitting on, but like between Time Before Time and Old Dog, there's a number, and it hasn't gone above that number. And I'm like, how do I? Don't know how to fix that. I fixed it but like with the comic book market, I went to Comics Pro, and because of all the mainstream books, I think I've done signings at so many comic shops over the years.
Right.
I've good relationships. I think I'm not the biggest creator in the world, but I think I sell a certain amount, and that works. Book market is. I wish there was some way I could figure out how to crack the book market a bit more. Not at the cost of comic shops, but just that I think there's an audience who they'll read graphic. They'll never read a comic book, but they'll read a graphic novel.
I think you're probably right. Yeah,
but I don't know how to reach them. I've no idea. And I would like that because it offers more security on your creator-owned books, and I've got a creator thing I'm working on at the moment, but I'm just so busy work for hire, it's hard to make the time for it. But I don't want to stop doing creator-owned stuff. I want to always make sure I have something, not just Old Dog, but something new with different artists, because I love working with artists. The handy thing with the work for hire stuff is that a publisher pays the artist, so it's a lot easier to do.
Sure. Well, if I can point anybody in the direction of Old Dog, I absolutely loved it. Felt terrible that I hadn't gotten a chance to read it yet, but I picked it up at my local comic shop. I think I grabbed their last copy, and that was on the shelf. And I finally had a chance to sit down and go through it, and it's fantastic. It has a little bit of everything. The action scenes in it are wonderful, and it's really worth diving into it and parsing out for yourself what you think is going on. but it's definitely worth it. And I mean, I haven't.
But even the case
Go
in
ahead.
point, it's like case in point. It took you this long to pick up the book. It's not a criticism. It's just like you put the book out, and you're like, oh, how's it doing? Some books just take a while to sell, and you can't. The first month where your numbers come in, like, is clearly what decides whether or not you can do more of it. And I can, which is great. But you also, like, not everybody picks up the book the week it comes out. Some people it takes months, sometimes a couple of years. So it's tough to, like I said, with Time Before Time, we could have just called it right there and then after the first arc. But you have to try and, like, give projects enough leeway for an audience to like I'm watching it. I just started watching Ozark. That show's got 5 seasons. Where was I for the last 5 years? And I'm loving it. Great. But, like, it took me 5 years to watch the bloody thing, and it's right up my alley. Like, you could not go like this is like if somebody watched this, they go like, Deck would love this, and they're right. But it took me 5 years, so it's tough. The on the creator own level stuff, the money of it is so, like, dependent on whether you can keep doing it, but also, if you don't make the thing, readers can't find it. So it's a tough balancing act there, and I'm lucky in a way that, like, I could do Marvel work and keep myself going. Not everything's riding on the creator own stuff all the time. So it's it's a tough. Sorry, my life is so hard, man.
Yeah, that is
doing my dream job. You don't know how hard it is.
It is. No, but like the comparisons to Wildstorm, and then I haven't seen Person of Interest. I just sounds like it would be something right up my alley, but I missed Person of Interest because I was my favorite TV show, I think, of all time is probably Lost. And, slightly behind it on that list is Fringe. I mean, I just love both of those shows. I love, there's still things I like. One of the last lines in, I think, the last episode of Fringe that, the main character that was also in Lord of the Rings, his name, John Noble. His name
Bishop. John Noble. Yeah, Walter Bishop.
Yeah, Walter Bishop. Like, one of his, like, lines from one of the last few episodes, like, I still, like, think about a lot. And I don't know if anybody else knows what the quote is, but Lost was the same way. Like, I think about the episode, like, whatever happened all the time. I just love that.
Yeah, but there's some amazing stuff. Like, I will say, then I would highly recommend you check out Person of Interest. It's done in one episodes, like say Fringe was at the beginning, but then the mythology starts to build in, like, the same way, and and then new characters come in that make it even better. Like, you've got a treat. You got to get on that.
All right, I will do that on your recommendation. I looked it up. You had mentioned one of the directors of Irish movies, Neil Jordan. I think
that's it.
Did The Crying Game, also did Michael Collins, and I think he directed Interview with the Vampire from '94.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It. But
I mean, there's a few. There wasn't just him. There was who else as well? Who did The Name of the Father? Some. Well, to be fair, some British directors did some Irish films around that time, probably because they were more known and get stuff off the ground. So I'm hell did The Name of the Father, but look, I mean, actually, wait, that was Jim Sheridan, I think. So but case in point, like, I'd also like to do more of those. Like, so I did Savage Town. I also did Bog Bodies a few years later.
Yep.
I have an idea for another. I have 2 ideas for Irish crime stories.
Oh, nice.
It's just the time. I just have the time to work on them, and I'd like to do that type of stuff as well. I think the reason I kind of went in on Time Before Time and Old Dog was that I love sci-fi stuff, and I think from a writing point of view, I was worried I was kind of just doing the local Irish crime stuff, and that would all I could be seen to do. Now, in the meantime, Alien happened and Thundercats happened, so I don't think there's any danger of being typecast now. So I think all the more reason I'd love to go back and do another one of those type of books, because they'd be so different. Even Thundercats is like I'm writing dialogue in a way that I don't feel quite. It's all, I don't want to say Shakespearean, but like I'm writing it in the kind of a bit in the voice of the cartoon. Panthro, don't go through that wall. Like, it's not how Alien is written, for example. But it's also good to write something in another genre, also something nice the kids can read. Like, was that Dublin Comic Con? Some girl? No, it was at I was at Richmond, and this little girl came up some little girl in a Wonder Woman outfit, and she's looking through Thundercats. I was about to say like just take it because I don't think I have anything that like a little girl can read.
Yeah.
So having something like Thundercats where like it wasn't designed to be a kid's book or anything, but it was after we did the first issue, I read it, I realized kid could read this, no problem. So it wasn't by design, but I do actually quite like I've accidentally done a book that like I could hand to like a friend's kid,
Yeah, that's you could absolutely. It's a fun story, It has all of those.
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to write 90s X-Men. That's my goal with that. Like I don't want to write X-Men 90s X-Men necessarily, but I'm trying to channel that kind of youthful enthusiasm in a comic book that I remember. Whether how accurate it is or not, I'm not sure. But that's what. The Alien was. I would say Alien was more how I like to write, like dark and moody. The way it was paced. I still have the same pacing in Thundercats, the way I like to write, but it's just it's trying to do something a bit more. So the goal with Thundercats was a little darker than the cartoon, but true to the spirit of it. So it's not super bright and happy like animated 90s or 80s animation. It's got a more of a edge to it, I'd like to think, but nothing there that you would be, is too cutesy or
definitely,
or trying to pander to kids or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I'm excited for folks who haven't yet to get in there and check them out. I mean, there's just like such a breadth of different work. I mean, even Injection that I picked up and read a few years ago, your work on that, and it's also interesting. And one of the things I talk about friends when I try and get them into reading comics is like if you find somebody you like, whether or not it's a writer or an artist, try and look at different things they've done, and maybe that's just something that interests me. But I think if you're into comics, to see how folks is how your style or how the things that you've done have changed over the years, and even from looking at like Injection to Old Dog, to see whether or not everything feels the same, or if there's you can see an artist or a writer pushing themselves.
What do you think? I'm curious because I'm always curious about other people's interpretation of my stuff is because I'm completely biased. I don't have a biased opinion on it. Because to me, like I feel like there's a lot of Injection in Old Dog. I mean, a lot of Old Dog is like the stuff that I've loved doing over the years, and Injection was 100% one of those. So it's not the same story or anything, but I do think there's a lot of it in there. But that's my point of view. I don't know what you think.
I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, with the same artist on both, there's certain similarities. I felt with Old Dog though, there was more of like a confidence in terms of we don't need to jazz up a talking head, and if we're going to be more experimental with paneling, like we're going to do it at a particular scene and like save it for the right moment, which I think is kind of helps. You're also doing the writing and the artwork in both, but I think that shows like a kind of like confidence. Like we don't have to go nuts for everything. I'm going to put links in the show notes for folks to check out your newsletter, Declarations, and I also know you are doing either a podcast or an interview series with some folks on. I saw it on YouTube, but your deck tape. I know you just talked to Nick Roche.
Yeah. I'd also say if anyone's curious about Old Dog, on my website, declanshalvey.com, you can read like a preview story, issue 0, for free, if you're curious.
Yes, so please do that. Please pick up Old Dog, and if you haven't had a chance yet, check out Alien, check out Thundercats. I'll also plug Bog Bodies and Savage Town. I will say though, Bog Bodies I think is probably the darkest in terms of tone thing that you've worked on.
Little dark.
But Declan, it was so great to meet you at Dublin Comic Con, and then Paul Carroll from Limit Break Comics was nice enough, and Gary Maloney was nice enough to invite me out to the pub after, so I got to hang out. I felt like a real,
where the real fun happens.
I feel like a real comics person. I was sitting at a table near you and across from Chris O'Halloran, and so yeah, I felt it was everyone was very nice. We had a couple of pints and had a wonderful time, and so it was very nice.
You're officially in Irish comics now.
Yes. Oh, good. That's good. I'm very excited. But yeah, I'll have links to everything in the show notes. Shout out to my brother Bobby, the Cryptid Creator Corner's #1 most dedicated fan. He was with me there at Dublin Comic Con and in Ireland, and he goes to Baltimore with me, listens to all my episodes, and I'm going to have him, read Old Dog next. I think he'll really enjoy it. But listeners, thank you very much. Check out Declan's newsletter and make sure you get yourself a copy of Old Dog. And thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Good night.
This is Byron O'Neill, one of your hosts of the Cryptid Creator Corner, brought to you by Comic Book Yeti. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of our podcast. Please rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. It lets us know how we're doing, and more importantly, how we can improve. Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Cryptid Creator Corner, maybe you would enjoy our sister podcast, Into the Comics Cave. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.